Some homes, they're built to last decades. Others, like these, are designed to last for hundreds and maybe even thousands of years. For today's video, we're going to take a look at 15 amazing houses that are designed to survive forever. Starting with 15, the Flood Barrier House in the Netherlands. So in a low-lying country, where a quarter of the land is below sea level, the Netherlands has long been synonymous with flood management. Among the boldest ideas to emerge in recent decades is the development of amphibious housing, structures designed not to resist floods through brute force, but to adapt and float with them. In the village of Maasbommel, located along the River Maas in the Dutch province of Gelderland, stands a group of houses that might look ordinary, but underneath their modest facades are groundbreaking concepts in climate-resilient architecture. They rise and fall with the water. These homes are the result of a collaborative effort between the Dutch architecture firm Factor Architecten and water management company Dura Vermeer. Completed in the early 2000s, this flood barrier home is not a prototype or a temporary shelter. They are fully functional permanent residences. The capacity here is achieved not by elevating them permanently on stilts or building levees around them, but by designing the homes themselves to float if needed. At the core of the design is a floating concrete basement. Each home rests on a hollow foundation, essentially a watertight concrete box that sits within a dock-like steel frame. Under dry conditions, the house behaves like any other home, with concrete base resting securely on the ground. But when floodwaters come in and fill the dock cavity, the buoyant foundation causes the entire structure to rise. Steel guiding posts run through these sleeves in the sides of the house. These posts ensure that as the home floats up, it remains completely vertical and stable, preventing any drifting or tipping. This passive mechanical-free system requires no human intervention, and the home responds automatically to the water level. Utilities like water, electricity, and sewage are connected with flexible hoses and pivot joints, much like those used on boats. The structure above the concrete float is built using lightweight materials, primarily timber framing with high-efficiency insulation. From the street, they look like small, modern townhouses, but in flood conditions, they'll transform into a buoyant life raft for entire families. This project was part of a broader Dutch strategy called Room for the River, which abandoned the old notion of endlessly building higher dikes instead of embracing a more adaptive relationship with the water. This kind of shift in thinking has inspired similar developments in other flood-prone regions. Projects modeled on this one have been proposed or built in Bangkok, New Orleans, Jakarta, and parts of the UK. What also makes them sustainable over time is their repairability. The materials used, wood, concrete, and steel, they're durable and easily maintained. There's no complex proprietary system that will become obsolete in 10 years. The simplicity of this design is a feature, not a flaw. Residents have reported feeling secure during flood alerts, confident that their homes will rise gently rather than be inundated. Some have even compared the sensation to being on a stable boat. There's no panic, no need to flee, only a quiet adjustment to the rhythm of the river. In this way, the flood barrier house turns a natural threat into something manageable. It doesn't eliminate the water, it eliminates the danger. Number 14. The Earthship Biotexture Homes. In the high desert outside Taos in New Mexico is a community of homes unlike any other. Known as earthships, these structures were designed from the beginning not to just last decades, but centuries, entirely off the grid, self-sustaining and made from recycled materials. Architect Michael Reynolds began developing the earthship concept in the 1970s as a response to environmental degradation and housing insecurity. Since then, these earthships have evolved into one of the most radical forms of durable housing. It's built primarily from earth-packed tires, which form load-bearing walls that are then plastered with adobe or concrete. The result is a dense, fireproof, rot-proof structure with exceptional thermal mass. Glass walls on the south-facing side of the structure collect solar heat, which is then stored in the thick tire walls and slowly release overnight. This passive solar design means the homes require almost no fossil fuel to maintain. The roof is built to harvest rainwater, which is then filtered and reused multiple times for drinking, bathing, plant irrigation, and finally, in toilets. The solar panels provide electricity too, and gray water is used to grow food. But the durability of the earthships isn't just about its sustainability. The construction method, the pounding earth into tires, creates the walls that are both dense and flexible. In flood-prone zones, the waterproof nature of this plastered tire wall can keep out more effectively than traditional building materials. Because they're made from inorganic and non-combustible material, the earthships are also resistant to rot, termites, and fire. Their simplicity allows for easy maintenance too over time, and many original earthships built in the 70s are still standing today. Oh, and that location of the earthship community in Taos is no accident. The high desert climate poses some challenges: temperature swings, dry wind, and limited rainfall. If earthships can survive there, they can survive pretty much anywhere. The earthship model does challenge conventional architecture norms by proving that permanence doesn't really require excess. In fact, it suggests that the most resilient homes might be those that work with nature instead of against it. These are not doomsday bunkers or luxury fortresses, but practical, durable homes that quietly endure and will likely outlast modern constructions by decades, if not more. Number 13. The Malator House in Wales. Malator House. This is an underground home built into the hills of Pembrokeshire in Wales. It's completed in 1998. This unique residence was designed by the architectural firm Future Systems for a Member of Parliament, Bob Marshall Andrews. At first, it may not even look like a house. It kind of looks like a grassy hill with a single oval glass opening and a camouflage chimney. But beneath that green facade is one of the most resilient and integrated homes ever built. The house is primarily made from reinforced concrete and steel with prefabricated parts that were assembled on site. The roof is actually a living turf surface, which not only provides insulation but protects the structure from wind and rain. By embedding the home into the hillside, the architects gave it a natural thermal mass and shelter from any harsh weather. The entrance is subtle and designed to blend in with the landscape, while the front of the house is a panoramic glass wall that faces the Irish Sea. But because most of the structure is underground, it's protected from almost every force: storms, temperature swings, and even airborne pollutants. Its bunker-like construction does ensure it can last indefinitely. Its thick earth-covered roof also makes it pretty highly energy efficient. In winter, it retains its heat naturally. In summer, it stays cool. It is a single open-plan space with a color-coded bathroom and kitchen pods that sort of break up the area instead of traditional walls. This makes the structure flexible for reconfiguration in the future, and fewer walls means less rigid infrastructure, means fewer stress points in the building over time. Its use of high-quality materials in its integration with the land does reduce its exposure to erosion. It also sits far from any flood zone, coastal erosion, or landslide-prone areas, all of which were taken into account. Malator isn't just a house, it is a prototype. It was meant to show that long-lasting, environmentally resilient homes could be beautiful, modern, and practical. It's an example of blending architecture with nature, and it can lead to true durability, not through brute strength, but through intelligent integration. Number 12. Villa Vals, Switzerland. Built into the mountainside above the village of Vals in Switzerland, Villa Vals is a circular subterranean residence that combines technology with timeless design. Created by Christian Mueller Architect and Sea Arch in 2009, this home was designed to leave the alpine landscape untouched while achieving an extreme level of permanence. From the outside, the house is nearly invisible. The only clue to its presence is a large round window cut into the mountain, framed by natural stone and facing the valley. All the other parts of the house are hidden beneath layers of rock, soil, and vegetation, and this isn't simply a visual decision, it was one of the structural strategies. By embedding the home within the mountain, the architects used the surrounding geology as a protective shell. Its construction involved excavating directly into the slope using reinforced concrete to shape the interior shell, and the resulting structure is deeply insulated and benefits from the mountain's stable temperature. There's really minimal exposure to the external environment, meaning their materials degrade at a way slower rate than conventional above-ground buildings. And despite its hidden nature, the interior is open and full of natural light. The main facade with its panoramic window brings sunlight deep into the home and offers views of the valley. Interior walls are made of durable concrete and local wood, which were chosen for aesthetics and resilience. And the furnishings and layout are minimal but practical. Nothing is excessive, and everything was selected for long-term usability. Villa Vals is not just a home, it's kind of like a philosophy. By embedding the house in a natural formation rather than building over it, the designers dramatically extend its theoretical lifespan. In the years since its completion, the house has required almost no maintenance beyond standard upkeep, and it stands as proof that some of the longest-lasting houses may not be towering or bold. They may be hidden, quiet, and embedded within the earth itself. Number 11. The Safe House, Poland. So at first glance, the Safe House in Warsaw looks more like a fortress than a home. Constructed in 2009 by architectural firm KWK Promesh, the structure was created with the express purpose of being nearly indestructible and completely secure. Every design element serves a dual purpose: aesthetics and impenetrability. The home is built primarily from reinforced concrete and steel, and it forms a cube-like shell around a glass core interior. And what makes it extraordinary is its kinetic design: massive movable concrete walls that literally seal the house shut. These retractable panels that can close completely over windows and doors transform the structure from a modern residence into what is essentially a concrete bunker. The outer facade includes thick sliding walls and a drawbridge-style second-floor balcony that retracts, which is awesome. When open, the house is full of light and air, offering a comfortable living space. But at night, or in any situation deemed unsafe by its owners, it becomes a sealed, fortress-like enclosure. The materials used, especially the heavy-duty concrete and steel, were chosen for their durability against the environment. In theory, this house could withstand earthquakes, storms, and even deliberate attack. It's also got redundancy systems in place like backup power and water reserves. There is no historical element to this structure. It is a 21st century response to modern concerns about security, disaster, and architectural permanence. And while it's located in a peaceful Warsaw suburb, the house embodies an almost Cold War-era mindset, adapted to the modern era. The engineers behind this safe house weren't trying to make a traditional family home. They were designing a structure to survive long after the others have failed. And yet, despite the intimidating exterior, the interior is warm, minimalist, and livable. It features large glass walls that retract when the house is open, and it reveals gardens and walkways. The duality of openness and absolute defense makes the safe house one of the coolest and durable residential constructions in the world. Number 10. The Dome Home, Florida. Pensacola Beach, Florida, the Dome Home. This was constructed in 1982 by retired oil producer Bob Lee. From the start, Lee designed the house to be structurally resilient against coastal hazards, especially hurricanes. While it no longer stands today due to land erosion, not a structural failure, it does remain one of the most compelling real-world examples of a private residence engineered to survive indefinitely. Built on elevated pilings to keep it above any storm surge, these domes weren't just for aesthetics. They were based on a geodesic design that evenly distributed the stress and allowed wind to pass around the structure instead of against it. This design minimizes the flat surfaces and sharp angles, meaning it did offer little resistance to hurricane or even high-speed wind, which reduced the risk of damage. During its lifespan, the Dome Home withstood multiple Category 4 and 5 hurricanes, including Hurricane Ivan in 2004 and Hurricane Dennis in 2005, without any structural compromise. The foundation was reinforced to prevent the undermining from typical erosion, though eventual coastal shift brought the sea directly beneath it, which ultimately led to its abandonment, not because of a flaw in the house, but because the land was literally washing away from under it. It was constructed using a combination of poured concrete and foam insulation. The walls were pretty thick and had no cavities for moisture intrusion. The material was chosen for its water resistance, fireproof nature, and its longevity. Ventilation, plumbing, and electrical conduits were embedded in there directly within the concrete to minimize the impact of salt air. And the house was off-grid capable with solar panels and a rainwater collection system. It didn't rely on conventional roof trusses, siding, or shingles, all components that commonly degrade or will fail over time. The exoskeleton acted like a shell, absorbing external forces. And while it was built to be luxurious, it was also functional and efficient. Eventually, though, shifting tides and rising seas led to the local government condemning the area. But again, the house itself was never the issue. Satellite images show its durability, standing alone while its surroundings have vanished. The Dome Home. It remains an icon of hurricane-resistant design. It proved that a well-planned geometry and materials can outperform size, style, or cost when it comes to survival. Though gone today, it left behind a legacy of what it means to build something not just for now, but forever. Number 9. The Bolton Stone House, Massachusetts. The Bolton Stone House is a lesser-known but remarkable residence located in rural Massachusetts. It's constructed entirely from granite blocks without the use of traditional mortar. Designed and built by engineer and sculptor David Bolton in the early 2000s, this house is a modern homage to megalithic architecture, built to last for centuries, if not longer. The entire structure was assembled using dry stacking techniques, meaning each stone was cut, shaped, and placed with precision so interlocks with the surrounding stones under its own weight. No adhesives or binding materials were used, and this method mimics ancient stone architecture, seen in places like Machu Picchu or Inca walls in Peru. The walls are over 2 feet thick in some places, making them highly insulating and impervious to fire, rot, insects, and most environmental threats. The roof, rather than being conventional shingles or metal, is also made of layered stone slabs with a drainage system hidden beneath. Everything about this home is over-engineered for permanence. Bolton installed renewable systems too, including a solar array and a geothermal heating and cooling system. All plumbing and electrical systems were routed through channels carved directly into the stone or routed around the inner wall cavities using modular panels, meaning repairs can be made without disturbing the structure. The house was never intended for resale or even commercial use. It was Bolton's personal experiment in timeless architecture, yet it still functions as a complete modern home with a kitchen, bathrooms, bedrooms, and living spaces. Because it relies on no synthetic materials, adhesives, or mass-produced components, the Bolton stone house can be maintained indefinitely. Theoretically, if left alone, the structure could still be recognizable and largely intact in 1,000 years. It is a true example of permanence through simplicity, an engineering achievement that quietly proves ancient methods still work, and maybe they're better than many modern ones. Number 8. Home-Ers Diagonal Design House, Italy. In the hills of central Italy, among the vineyards and medieval towns, is a house that at first seems to defy the conventional idea of verticality. Instead of upright walls and right angles, it tilts, not by accident or error, but by design. This is the diagonal house developed by the Italian research group Home-Er, Housing Modules for Emergencies and Recovery, that's the little R. A building designed to last forever, even in the most unstable conditions. Now, at first glance, it looks like something out of an experiment or a modern art installation. Its angled frame tilts off the horizontal axis, but this angle isn't aesthetic flair. It's an intentional response to seismic risk. This design was born in the wake of a devastating earthquake in Italy's Abruzzo region. It was developed as a response to emergency housing needs and long-term durability. This diagonal design begins with a triangular steel frame. Unlike traditional rectangular structures, which rely on vertical walls and horizontal beams, this design uses a rotated axis that spreads stress evenly across the structure. In an earthquake, a conventional house experiences torque and shear, and that often causes joints to fail. A Home-Er house instead channels those forces along its slanted frame, reducing stress on any single point. It works kind of like a suspension bridge, dispersing energy and avoiding collapse. The house is built on a reinforced concrete platform that's anchored with shock absorbers, and that foundation allows for some limited motion during seismic events. The walls are made from composite panels, lightweight, fire-resistant, and thermally insulated. And one of the cool forward-thinking features is the energy independence. Integrated solar panels provide all the electricity needs, and the home's also equipped with passive ventilation systems, which use the diagonal ceiling geometry to promote airflow. That pretty much reduces the need for air conditioning in most seasons. Another advantage of it is transportability. It can be assembled from prefabricated components in a matter of days, using cranes and basic tools, and in earthquake-stricken areas or remote regions where infrastructure is limited, that speed and flexibility can be the difference between rebuilding quickly and waiting years for a permanent shelter. Too often, disaster response housing is disposable. It's meant to fill a gap for a few months or years before being abandoned. Home-Er rejects that model. Its diagonal house is both emergency shelter and dream home, built to serve generations in any environment. Since its development, it's attracted attention from global disaster relief agencies as well as architects seeking seismic-resistant models. Pilot projects have been launched in earthquake zones in Central Asia and South America, and in each case, the frame has performed well under stress. The designers wanted to break visually away from the past and send a signal that requires a shift in thinking. And yet, the underlying logic is timeless. Distribute stress, minimize the weak points, use local energy, and design for repairability. It's those principles that are what have allowed ancient buildings to survive, and they're what give the Home-Er house its claim to being designed forever. Moving on to number 7, the cave houses of Guadix in Andalusia, Spain. In the hills of southern Spain lies one of the oldest continually inhabited underground housing systems in Europe. The cave houses of Guadix are located in the province of Granada in Andalusia, and they're not a historic relic frozen in time, they are living, breathing homes. They're built into soft clay, called badlands. These troglodyte dwellings offer not only protection from the elements, but exceptional durability. The Guadix cave neighborhood is known as Barrio de las Cuevas. It's believed to date back to at least the 15th century and possibly earlier. The earliest documented expansion here coincided with the Reconquista, when Muslim inhabitants were pushed southwards and retreated into rural areas. The basic structure of a cave house in Guadix involves a front facade of stone or whitewashed masonry, behind which rooms are dug directly into the hill. Many cave homes here are still passed down through generations and have expanded over time as families have added more chambers deeper into the hills. The surrounding earth acts as insulation, which maintains an interior temperature between 62 Fahrenheit to 68 Fahrenheit, that's 17 to 20 Celsius, year-round, regardless of the outside weather. The design requires no mechanical air conditioning or even central heating. This home is now attracting global interest. There's no roof to collapse under the snow or tile to blow off during storms, and because the homes are partially or fully underground, they're protected from wildfires, UV radiation, and high wind. Of course, the lack of wooden framing eliminates the risks from termites, rot, and fire, and since the structure is monolithic with no separate load-bearing systems, failure is extraordinarily rare. There's estimated to be over 2,000 inhabited cave dwellings in Guadix today, and many are still functioning as residences. Modern cave homes can be fitted with solar panels, septic tanks, and even geothermal heating systems. However, even those without such upgrades remain habitable and durable with the most basic upkeep. New cave homes have occasionally been carved out over here in the modern era, especially by masons that are trained in the traditional techniques, and while machinery can assist in some excavation today, many tunnels are still made by hand. Since the structures are formed entirely from excavated material, there is no need to import bricks, cement, or wood. In recent years, architectural interest in Guadix has surged. Urban designers, sustainability experts, and alternative housing advocates have begun studying the cave homes as models for climate-resilient construction. Governments and universities have sent delegations to Guadix to learn from this centuries-old system of passive architecture. Ironically, many of the principles that make them successful, the earth sheltering, thermal mass orientation, and natural ventilation, are now being reintroduced into modern high-tech buildings under the banner of green architecture. This social cohesion reinforces the value of long-term housing, not just as a shelter, but as a permanent, rooted way of life. Speaking of life, in terms of lifespan, these cave homes have already demonstrated multi-century longevity. With proper maintenance, whitewashing, clearing of drainage channels, and maybe the occasional patch, these homes can last indefinitely. Even abandoned cave homes often remain intact for decades before nature will reclaim them, and many can be restored with minimal effort. Number 6. Casa do Penedo. In the hills of northern Portugal stands one of the most curious houses in Europe, Casa do Penedo, or the House of Rock. From a distance, it looks as though it was formed by nature, a cluster of massive boulders in a windswept land. But look closer and you'll see rectangular window panes, a tiled roof, and a front door embedded between the stones. Built in 1974 as a rural retreat, Casa do Penedo is a prime example of enduring architecture that embraces simplicity. The house wasn't built as a tourist attraction or an architectural marvel, but simply as a family vacation home. Yet the way it was built, using 4 granite boulders as primary structural elements, made it a curiosity. Rather than removing these stones or working around them, the architects used them directly in the layout. 2 of the boulders serve as side walls, and 1 is a rear support, and the 4th is part of the roof. Granite is one of the hardest and most weather-resistant stones. It doesn't rot, warp, or burn. Its high compressive strength, over 200 millipascals, makes it an ideal load-bearing material. By using granite as a functional and aesthetic element, the house avoids many of the structural vulnerabilities found in conventional buildings. In many ways, it's more similar to an ancient stone fortification than a modern home. The walls are built from local stone that's mortared with cement and sealed for weather. The roof, rather than being pitched with wood beams and shingles, is a series of stone slabs carefully arranged. The slabs are laid with a slight slope to direct rainwater runoff, and their mass does add some thermal insulation. In the summer they deflect heat, in winter they retain it. The total internal space is pretty modest. A small fireplace provides heat. The interior furnishings are pretty basic: wood benches, stone countertops, and rustic lighting. Because the home was built without plumbing or electricity, there's no wiring to degrade, no pipes to rupture, and no risk of electrical fires or leaks. In terms of long-term durability, this lack of systems is actually a strength. Some minor exterior reinforcements and steel bars were added to protect the windows and doors after the house gained international attention, but the core structure has never been replaced or rebuilt. In the broader conversation about buildings designed to last, this one stands apart. Doesn't rely on synthetic materials or cutting-edge tech, doesn't have solar panels or smart home integration, but what it has is mass, geometry, and respect for the natural land. The permanence of it comes from building with nature, not in spite of it. If left alone, the house could likely remain standing for centuries, the granite walls slowly covered by moss becoming a seamless part of the hillside once again. Number 5. Traditional Tibetan stone houses in the Himalayas. Way up there in the high altitude of the Himalayas, where the oxygen is thin, winters are long, and the landscape is as unforgiving as it is beautiful, are some of the world's most durable homes. These are the stone houses of the Tibetan Plateau, built by hand, often without mortar, and standing for hundreds of years in villages perched thousands of meters above sea level. These homes were not designed with obsolescence in mind. They were designed to endure. A traditional Tibetan stone house, or kangpa, is a multi-story structure often built from locally quarried stone and timber. In regions like Ladakh or central Tibet, materials are scarce, but what is available, stone, earth, and wood, is used with extraordinary ingenuity. No cement or concrete was required, and in many cases even mortar was avoided. The weight of the structure, combined with its mass and geometry, is what has kept these buildings upright, despite centuries of snow, wind, and seismic activity. The houses are typically built in tiers, with the lowest floor reserved for animals, the middle floor for living and cooking, and the upper floor for storage or religious use. These interior configurations were not aesthetic preferences, they were practical decisions. Animal warmth rising through the stone floors helped heat the living spaces, and kept storage above living quarters protected food and fuel from dampness. Now, one of the reasons they've lasted so long is the mass of their walls. They're often over 2 feet thick. These stone walls act as thermal barriers, absorbing heat from sunlight during the day and releasing it slowly at night. Roofs are flat and often covered in layers of tamped earth, straw, and gravel. In regions that receive snowfall, the flat roof does allow for snow to compact and form an insulating layer. Meltwater is directed away from the house through carefully designed drainage channels that are carved into the edges. Though timber use is rare and precious at high-altitude regions, it is used judiciously for window frames, interior supports, and sometimes roof beams. These joints were crafted without nails, allow the structure to flex slightly during an earthquake, which is essential in a region that's prone to this tectonic activity. The homes are oriented with spirituality in mind. Many face the east to capture the morning sun and are built with accordance to geometric principles similar to feng shui. The entrance is usually narrow and shielded to keep out cold air. Interior walls may be painted with Buddhist motifs, and the placing of sacred symbols and family altars is often encoded into the structure. Maintenance, when required, is handled by the family. Replastering walls with a mix of clay, dung, and straw is done seasonally. When a beam rots or breaks, it's replaced by a local carpenter with locally sourced wood. The entire home, from its foundation to its roof, is part of a closed-loop system. Nothing is wasted, and nothing is built for short-term use. In terms of survivability, few residential building types in the world have really matched the endurance of these Tibetan stone homes. They've survived earthquakes, floods, temperature extremes, and tests of centuries, all without the aid of modern machinery. In certain towns, entire neighborhoods of ancient stone houses are still inhabited, still repaired using traditional techniques, and still fulfilling the same role they did hundreds of years ago. They're also beginning to influence contemporary architecture. Architects and engineers studying the seismic-resistant design in traditional buildings have turned to Himalayan villages for lessons. Preservation societies and NGOs now support local builders in reviving traditional stone masonry and flexible timber joinery, not only as a cultural preservation effort, but as a template for climate-resilient low-carbon housing. By every metric, thermal performance, resilience, material sustainability, cultural continuity, the Tibetan stone house represents one of the most successful vernacular building types on the planet. They are homes where children still sleep, elders still pray, and families still gather around wood stoves to eat sampa, drink buttered tea under roofs that have seen centuries come and go. When I talk about houses that are designed to survive forever, there may be no better place to look than the high, cold villages of the Tibetan Plateau. Number 4. Icelandic turf houses. In one of the harshest inhabited environments on Earth, where winter nights last for months, winds whip unbroken across tireless plains, and volcanic activity remains a constant threat, the people of Iceland have developed a home that remains energy efficient and durable. For centuries, these homes have protected Icelanders from the brutal cold, withstanding centuries of weather, eruptions, and time. The fact that many turf houses from the 18th and 19th centuries are still standing, and that a few are still inhabited, is proof of their lasting power. The Icelandic turf house isn't just a relic of the past, it's a lesson in how to build structures that were meant to survive. The origins of the turf houses go back more than 1,000 years, when Norse settlers first arrived in Iceland by the late 9th century. They brought with them timber construction techniques from Norway. But they quickly realized that Iceland's environment was nothing like the heavily forested fjords of Scandinavia. Timber was scarce, the weather was more severe, and the soil was unique. The settlers adapted quickly, though. They turned to turf, thick slabs of grass-covered earth, layered into thick insulating walls and combined with whatever wood could be sourced. From this combination, the Icelandic turf house was born. Turf was cut from the surrounding landscape in large, manageable slabs with the grass intact. These slabs were stacked in interlocking patterns to form thick walls, sometimes up to a meter wide. The turf used in Iceland was rich with roots and tightly bound, especially from areas with dense sedge grass or mosses, which allowed it to hold together for decades without crumbling. Beneath the turf, a structural framework was made from wood, usually driftwood or whatever timber was available through trade. Posts and beams created the internal skeleton, but the sod walls provide the bulk of the home structure. The roofs, too, were covered in turf, laid over birch bark or waterproof membranes to allow the home to breathe while resisting leaks. These roofs not only insulated the home from above, but merged the house visually with the surrounding land. In winter, the snow would accumulate on the roof just as it did on the nearby hills, creating an insulating blanket that worked in the home's favor. The traditional floor plan was a long house, one large rectangular structure divided into sections, often with livestock on one end and family quarters on the other. In larger turf homes, separate rooms or wings were added around a central corridor, and stone floors and mud-packed earth were common, and fireplaces were centrally located. Ventilation was cleverly achieved through gaps at roof junctions and smoke holes above the cooking areas. The thick turf walls absorbed sound, created a quiet, insulated atmosphere. And many turf homes had decorative wood paneling and carvings inside, especially those belonging to wealthier families. While the turf itself eventually did need replacing, this was a routine, manageable process done every few decades. Unlike wood, which can rot, or stone, which can crack, turf can be renewed without requiring specialized materials or long-distance supply chains. Turf houses were also exceptionally suited to the Icelandic climate. Even when temperatures outside dropped below freezing for weeks on end, the inside of a well-maintained turf house remained livable. It's no exaggeration to say that turf houses helped Icelanders survive some of the most challenging years in the country's history. During the Little Ice Age, when temperatures across Europe fell dramatically and Iceland faced frequent crop failures, the turf house was often the difference between survival and exposure. But by the 20th century, however, turf houses began to fall out of favor. It was seen as backwards and outdated, and rapidly replaced by prefab homes and modern urban construction. Many turf houses were abandoned and entire villages transitioned into modern dwellings, but not all were lost. A number of turf homes were preserved by historians and conservationists. Today, turf houses remain a point of national pride in Iceland. The country has restored several turf farms and villages, like the Skagafjörður, which now serves as an open-air museum. These preserved sites are not empty shells, they contain original furnishings, tools, and even functional hearths. Some Icelanders have even returned to building turf homes for personal reasons. With climate changing driving interest in low-impact housing, the idea of building that requires no cooling, minimal heating, and blends into the environment has regained traction. But maybe what makes the turf house most unique is their deep integration into Icelandic culture and mindset. These homes are not just shelters, they're part of a worldview that sees humans as embedded in nature, not separate from it. Turf houses are not meant to dominate their surroundings, they're meant to belong to them. In terms of lifespan, the record speaks for themselves. Many turf houses lasted 100 to 200 years with regular upkeep. They're not fossils of the past, they are blueprints for the future. In an age when sustainability often means sacrificing comfort or durability, the turf house offers both. It's warm, quiet, strong, and at peace with the land. Number 3. Fujian Tulu, China. In the valleys of southeastern China's Fujian province are some of the world's most remarkable structures, massive circular and rectangular buildings made almost entirely of earth, capable of housing hundreds of people under one roof. These are the Fujian Tulo, or earthen buildings, constructed by the Hakka and Minnan people beginning over 600 years ago. A single tulo can function like a well-contained fortress, housing entire communities that live, farm, and raise families within the walls. These buildings aren't just homes, they're micro-societies that are built to last. A typical one is circular in shape, with walls that go up to 5 stories and span up to 70 meters in diameter. Each is surrounded by a thick wall made of rammed earth, compact soil mixed with stone, bamboo, and other natural fibers, which creates a dense and thermally efficient envelope. The Hakka were migratory people who needed to build with what was available, so soiled, sand, lime, and sometimes glutinous rice, but the resulting strength of the walls has proven equal to or better than modern technology and long-term durability. The entrance to one is usually a single, heavily reinforced wooden door at the front, sometimes covered in iron or stone to resist forced entry. The internal layout is organized around a large central courtyard, often with a well or shared community kitchen in the middle. All the living spaces face inward, which promotes security and social cohesion. Each family occupies a vertical slice of the tulo, one room per floor, stacked up to 5 stories. The first floor is for cooking and storage, the second for living, and the top for sleeping. The circular shape is inherently stable. It distributes any seismic forces evenly around the structure. In fact, some have survived multiple earthquakes in the region, including the 1918 quake and the 2018 Sichuan quake, which damaged many modern buildings but left these standing. Thick earthen walls provide exceptional insulation here, keeping the interior cool in summer and warm in the winter. Rainwater is often collected from the sloped roof tiles and stored in underground cisterns. Because they were built to house up to 800 people, the ecological footprint per person is pretty low. Shared resources, communal kitchens, and multi-generational housing reduce consumption and waste. But the buildings weren't made to be replaced or even flipped, but to serve generations in the same family. Because the buildings are modular, they can be expanded or repaired without compromising the structure. There are over 3,000 of these still standing in Fujian today, while many are recognized by UNESCO as World Heritage Sites. The most famous is known as the King of the Tulo, a 4-story circular building with 72 staircases, 400 rooms, and a central ancestral hall. Many are still occupied by Hakka families who continue to live according to centuries-old rhythms of community life. Children play in the courtyards, the elders tend to communal gardens, and festivals bring the entire building alive with music and red lanterns. In an age of housing shortages and growing interest in circular economy, the Tulo offers a clear example of architecture designed for permanence. It was never just a shelter. It was a village, a fortress, a family tree, and a philosophy of living, all built into one. These buildings are alive in the truest sense, not because they move, but because they're lived in. They grow older with their people, and through that relationship, they survive. Number 2. Domes of Superadobe, California. In the dusty landscape of Hesperia, California, a group of curious dome-shaped structures rises from the ground. These aren't futuristic prototypes or art installations, they're homes, real, habitable, and fully functional, built using a technique known as superadobe. Pioneered at the California Institute of Earth Art and Architecture, or Cal-Earth, superadobe construction was designed from the beginning to last. It's a method born from both necessity and vision, which combines ancient earth-building traditions with the modern engineering. At its core, superadobe construction is pretty simple. Long sandbags are filled with earth, sometimes stabilized with a small amount of cement, and laid in layers, each core stacked in a continuous coil that spirals upward into the shape of a dome. The result is compressed earth wall systems that behave like a monolithic structure. Once complete, the exterior is typically coated with plaster or lime to protect it from erosion, and there's no nails, no metal beams, and no need for heavy machinery. The dome shape of this is key. Unlike square or rectangular homes that rely on vertical walls and flat roofs, the superadobe dome distributes stress naturally. This makes it highly resistant to earthquake, high wind, and even blasts, so its low profile and heavy mass anchor it to the earth. One prototype survived simulated earthquakes more powerful than the '94 Northridge quake, which destroyed thousands of modern homes. Each dome is built on a circular foundation that includes drainage channels to redirect water and a gravel bed to keep moisture from seeping into the walls. Openings for doors and windows are carefully arched to maintain integrity, and ventilation tubes are integrated into the design to allow for natural airflow. The homes can be expanded easily by adding smaller domes as rooms, connected through arched doorways to form these organic clusters. The domes require almost no ongoing maintenance. Even if the outer plaster layer wears down over time, it can be repaired with minimal effort. There's no moving parts to fail, no complicated systems to repair, and no high-tech components to replace. At the Cal Earth campus, demonstration domes were built in the 1990s, and they're still standing in excellent condition. They've endured decades of desert, sun, and windstorms. Some are used as offices, classrooms, or even artist residences. Others are used to test new coating materials or even design variations. But all share the same DNA: low cost, low tech, high durability construction with an emphasis on sustainability and permanence. Internationally too, superadobe has gained some recognition. In Pakistan, after the 2005 Kashmir earthquake, aid workers used the technique to build quake-resistant shelters for survivors. In Nepal, after the 2015 quake, dome homes were built in rural villages using local soil. In Kenya and Nigeria, schools and clinics have been constructed using this method. And in countries like Brazil, Australia, and Spain, enthusiasts have built off-grid homes for permanent year-round living. And in 2008, NASA expressed interest in this concept for lunar and Martian habitats. The idea was that astronauts could fill the bags with regolith or lunar soil and build shelters directly on the moon, using essentially the same technique tested in California. But critically, these homes are not built for aesthetics. Though many find their organic curves and natural materials beautiful, they're built for endurance. When the ground shakes, its symmetry and compression absorb the shock. When systems fail, the house continues to function. But perhaps what's most remarkable is that the homes are designed to be passed down. Unlike modern tract houses built with drywall, particle board, and glue, materials that deteriorate, these homes are made with ancient logic and modern proof, and they become part of the land itself. And that shift in mindset towards permanence and stewardship may be the most important survival feature of all. Number 1. The Trulli of Impenetrable, Italy. In the limestone-rich region of Apulia in southern Italy is a village that appears at first glance to have stepped out of a fairy tale. Whitewashed stone cottages with conical gray roofs that rise in tight clusters. These are the Trulli of Impenetrable, a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a unique achievement that's not only significant but exceptionally resilient. No mortar, no concrete, no synthetic materials, and yet they survived for centuries. Their distinctive design not just charming, functional, durable, and in many cases, nearly indestructible. The origins of them can be traced back to prehistoric Apulian building techniques. But their most iconic proliferation happened in the 14th or 18th centuries. This technique was likely refined over generations by local stonemasons. Each one is built using limestone boulders, first laid to form a circular dry stone wall. The roof is then constructed by layering flat limestone slabs in a spiral pattern that form a self-supporting dome. A typical one has thick exterior walls, sometimes over a meter thick, which not only insulate but lead to immense strength. Despite the lack of steel or cement, they've outlasted countless modern concrete structures and continue to stand, often unchanged after hundreds of years. But one fascinating aspect of their construction is the corbelled roof dome, which is built without formwork or scaffolding. Builders start with a ring of stones and add successive layers, narrowing the diameter with each tier. This spiral stacking technique creates a natural vault, topped with a decorative limestone cap that often contains symbolic shapes like spheres, cones, or discs. They also incorporate symbolic elements that reflect the spiritual traditions of their builders. Many roofs are painted with white lime wash symbols, crosses, hearts, crescents, stars, or mystical signs meant to bring good fortune. These markings are added with a brush and can be renewed or changed with each generation. One of the best preserved and most famous Trullo houses is the Trullo Sovrano, a two-story structure dating back to the 18th century. This one demonstrates how the technique can be scaled vertically while maintaining its stability. Today, it operates as a museum, allowing visitors to see firsthand how the interior was organized: living spaces, sleeping alcoves, and storage areas, all integrated within the thick curved stone walls. Because they're built with modular stone units, repairs can be made using traditional methods. In this way, the knowledge to build and repair is passed down from generation to generation. In some cases, homes have been maintained by the same family for centuries.